There is a place on this planet where green mountains rise into the clouds and stone walls glow golden in the morning light. It looks like something out of a dream. But those walls are not just beautiful. They do not crack during earthquakes. They move, they shift, they absorb the energy. And when the shaking stops, they settle back exactly where they were.
The man credited with discovering Machu Picchu noticed a fascinating similarity between Inca sun worship rituals.
Engineers spent decades trying to figure out how to make buildings do this, but the people who built these walls figured it out 600 years ago. This is the story of a city that defies everything we believe about ancient civilizations. Let us start with what you would actually see if you stood at this place today. You are standing almost 2.5 kilometers above the ocean. The air is thin, the wind is cold, and in every direction, the Andes Mountains rise around you like a wall built by the earth itself. Below your feet, the ground drops away on both sides. On one side, the Urubamba River twists through a canyon so deep that the water looks like a silver thread. On the other side, thick green jungle stretches out toward the Amazon. And right here, on this narrow strip of rock between two mountain peaks, someone built an entire city. Not a camp, not a few huts, a city. There are more than 150 stone buildings here. There are wide open plazas where hundreds of people once gathered. There are staircases carved directly into the rock, connecting one level to another. There are temples with walls so smooth they look like they were poured from a mold. And stepping down the steep mountainside in every direction, there are terraces. Dozens and dozens of stone terraces, each one wide enough to farm on, each one perfectly level, even though the mountain beneath them is anything but level. The whole thing covers about 5 square kilometers when you include the farming terraces and the outer structures. That is bigger than many modern towns. And every single piece of it was placed here by hand on a ridge so steep and so remote that even getting to this spot today requires either a 4-day hike or a winding train ride through mountain valleys. This is Machu Picchu, and when UNESCO looked at this place, they called it the most outstanding tangible legacy of the Inca civilization.
The Inca civilization was one of the most astounding to have graced our planet. Unlike the cultures of the old world that had contact with the Phoenicians.
And that is not an exaggeration. Because the more you understand about what these builders were working with, or rather, what they were working without, the more unbelievable this city becomes. Here is where the story starts to feel impossible. The people who built Machu Picchu had no wheels. Not small wheels, not big wheels, not wheels of any kind. They had no iron, no steel, no metal tools at all for cutting or shaping stone. They had no cement and no mortar to glue their walls together. They had no cranes, no pulleys, no engines, and no animals strong enough to drag giant stones up a mountainside. They had no written language to draw up plans or record measurements. And they had no computers, no lasers, no levels, and no modern surveying equipment. What they had was stone hammers, wooden wedges, rope made from plant fibers, water, and their own 2 hands. That is it. Now hold that thought in your mind while we tell you what they actually built with those things. Because the gap between what they had and what they created is one of the most extraordinary gaps in the entire history of human construction. And once you see the details, you will never look at this place the same way again. Some of the stone blocks at Machu Picchu weigh more than 50 tons.
This is Machu Picchu, one of the 7 wonders of the world and one of the only Incan temples not destroyed by the Spanish.
That is heavier than a loaded semi-truck. And these blocks were not sitting in a flat open field, waiting to be nudged into place. They were on a mountain, a steep, rain-soaked, earthquake-prone mountain with no flat ground and no roads. They moved these stones using coordinated teams of workers, pulling with ropes, rolling them over logs, sliding them up earthen ramps, and levering them into position with wooden beams. Many of the stones still have small knobs sticking out of their surfaces, and researchers believe these knobs were gripping points used to lever and rotate each block into its final spot. And this was not just about moving stones from one place to another. The land itself was a problem. You cannot build a city on a steep mountain ridge the way you build on flat ground. The slopes are too sharp. The rain is too heavy. The earthquakes are too frequent. Anything you build on a slope like this should, by every law of physics and common sense, slide right off the mountain within a few years. But Machu Picchu did not slide. It did not crumble. It did not wash away. And the reason it survived has everything to do with something most visitors never even think about. Water is the most dangerous thing on a mountain. When the rainy season comes to this part of the Andes, the water hits hard, and it does not stop for months. That much water on steep rock will erode soil, undermine foundations, and trigger landslides that can wipe out entire hillsides in minutes. The builders of Machu Picchu understood this better than anyone. The terraces that step down the mountainside are not just farming platforms. Each one is built with a layered system underneath. At the bottom is a bed of large rocks. Above that is a layer of smaller stones. Then comes a layer of sand and gravel. And finally, on top, a layer of rich topsoil for growing crops. This design does something brilliant. When rain hits the surface, it soaks through the soil, passes through the sand and gravel, and drains out through the rock layer at the bottom without ever building up enough pressure to cause a collapse. Every single terrace is a drainage system and a farm and a retaining wall all at the same time.
In Machu Picchu, we're going to find three important sectors. Where we are now, it was the agriculture sector.
But the water management does not stop there. High above the city, a natural spring feeds a main canal that runs down through the settlement. This canal splits into smaller channels that carry water to more than 130 stone-lined conduits spread across the entire site. These conduits feed a series of stone fountains where residents could collect clean drinking water and where water was used in religious ceremonies. The Incas believed that water connected the physical world to the spiritual one. So the fountains were not just practical, they were sacred. The whole system works by gravity, just the natural slope of the mountain guiding water exactly where it needs to go. And because the terraces sit at different elevations, each one catches a slightly different amount of sunlight and wind. This created what scientists call microclimates, meaning the Incas could grow warm weather crops like maize on the lower terraces and cold weather crops like potatoes on the higher ones, all within the same small area. They turned a dangerous mountainside into a self-watering, self-draining, multi-climate farm 600 years ago. None of this was built by one person or even one group of people. Building Machu Picchu required hundreds, possibly thousands of workers drawn from across the Inca Empire. And here is something that changes the whole picture of what this place was. When scientists studied the skeletal remains of people found at Machu Picchu, they ran DNA tests, expecting to find mostly local highland people. What they found instead shocked them. The residents came from all over the empire. Some were from the high Andes. Some were from the Amazon jungle. Others came from the distant coast. Machu Picchu was not a small mountain village. It was one of the most ethnically diverse communities in the entire Inca world.
Machu Picchu, of course, located in Peru, was named one of the new wonders of the world back in 2007.
This was not a place built by slaves either. The Inca labor system, called mita, was a form of organized community service where people from different regions contributed their labor for set periods of time. The workers who built Machu Picchu were coordinated teams, specialists in stone cutting and terracing and water engineering, brought together from across a vast empire to create something none of them could have built alone. The construction happened during the reign of Pachacuti Inca Yupanqui, the ruler who transformed the Inca state from a small kingdom into the largest empire in the Americas before Columbus. Pachacuti did not just want a fortress on a mountaintop. He wanted a royal estate and ceremonial center, a place where the power of the empire and the power of the cosmos came together in stone. The city sits precisely between two peaks, and its temples are aligned to the movements of the sun and the positions of sacred mountains. Every building, every plaza, every staircase was placed according to a plan that connected the earth to the sky. And at the center of that plan was the most remarkable stonework on the planet. The walls at Machu Picchu are built using a technique called ashlar masonry. Each stone block is cut and shaped so precisely that it fits against the next block with almost no gap at all. You cannot fit a credit card between the joints. And remember, no mortar holds these stones together. Nothing but gravity and perfect fit. But here is the part that amazes modern engineers. The stones are not cut to be perfectly square. They are intentionally irregular. Each block has slightly angled faces and subtle tapers that make the wall look almost organic, like the stones grew together rather than being placed. This was not a mistake. It was the most important design decision in the entire city. When an earthquake shakes this ridge, and earthquakes shake this ridge often, perfectly square walls would crack and collapse. But the irregular Inca stones do something different. They vibrate. They shift slightly against each other.
The policy of the Inca was that each of the 12 Inca in succession had what was called a panaca,
absorbing the energy of the quake. And then, when the shaking stops, they settle right back into position. The walls dance during an earthquake and then stand still again as if nothing happened. The Incas invented earthquake-resistant construction 500 years before the rest of the world started studying seismic engineering. And they did it without a single textbook. Now, here is the part that changes everything you thought you knew about this place. Everything we have talked about so far, the terraces, the temples, the fountains, the earthquake-proof walls, all of that is the part of Machu Picchu you can see with your eyes. But recent studies using LiDAR scanning and ground-penetrating radar have revealed something that even the first archaeologists who studied this site never knew. Beneath the visible city, there is a massive hidden foundation. Layers upon layers of crushed rock, gravel, and sand are packed into the mountain to create a stable base for everything above. This underground structure does three things. It absorbs the shock of earthquakes, so the buildings above do not have to take the full force. It channels groundwater away from the foundations, so the stone walls never sit in pooling water. And it anchors the entire city to the mountain itself, preventing the kind of slow sliding that destroys most structures built on steep slopes. The most astonishing finding is this. The hidden foundation beneath Machu Picchu may actually be larger than the visible city above it. More stone, more engineering, and more planning went into the part nobody can see than into the part that takes your breath away in photographs. They did not build a city on a mountain. They rebuilt the mountain first, and then they put a city on top of it, and then they left. After roughly 100 years of occupation, the people of Machu Picchu walked away. There are no signs of war, no signs of fire or destruction. The buildings were not torn down. The walls still stood. The terraces were intact. The fountains were still there. It appears to have been a planned departure. Stores were emptied. Valuables were taken. Access paths may have been deliberately blocked or hidden. The reasons are still debated among researchers. Disease, possibly introduced through early European contact, spread faster than the Europeans themselves. Climate stress, political collapse within the empire, disruption of the supply routes that kept food and people flowing to this remote ridge. Probably all of these played a part. Within a generation, the jungle swallowed the city. Vines covered the walls. Moss filled the joints between stones. The clouds and mist that hang over this ridge for most of the year make the city invisible from a distance. For 400 years, it sat in silence while the outside world forgot it existed. But the local Quechua people never forgot. They always knew where it was.
Inca, 1,000 years ago, were kicked out of Lake Titicaca by the Aymara people.
They just were never asked. In 1911, an American named Hiram Bingham was guided to the site by a local farmer. Bingham called it the lost city of the Incas and told the world he had discovered it. He was wrong about almost everything, including the name, the purpose, and the idea that it was ever truly lost. But his photographs made the world fall in love with the place, and the myth became more famous than the truth. Step back now and look at the full picture. A civilization with no wheels, no metal tools, no written language, and no machines built a city on a mountain ridge above the clouds. They moved stones heavier than trucks up steep slopes, using nothing but rope and human strength. They cut those stones so precisely that 600 years of earthquakes have not knocked them down. They built a water system that captured rain and spring water and delivered it to every corner of the city by gravity alone. They engineered drainage so effective that the heaviest rains in the Andes could not wash their work away. They created microclimates on terraces so they could grow different crops at different elevations in the same small space. They built a hidden foundation beneath the entire city that is larger than the city itself. And they did all of this while aligning their temples to the movements of the sun and the stars with a precision that modern instruments have confirmed. Then they left, quietly, completely. And the city they built kept standing for centuries after they were gone, needing no maintenance at all. The jungle grew over it, and the stones did not care. The earthquakes came, and the walls just shifted and settled back. The rain poured down, and the drainage kept working. We call ourselves the most advanced civilization in history. We build with steel and concrete and computer-guided machinery, and most of what we build will not last 100 years without constant upkeep. They built with their hands, and their work has outlasted everything we thought we knew about what human beings are capable of. That should make you feel something, and if you sit with it long enough, it probably will. What do you think we have lost that they understood? Tell us in the comments.